Welcome to our discussion on top voices, and this is a conversation that we have with global thought leaders in this industry. And I'm Paula McGrath, I'm the CEO and owner of International Achievers Group, and this is Bruno Herrmann, who's one of the best known and most well-respected professionals in this localization industry. And today our guest is Simon Hodgkins. Simon is also extremely well known in this industry and is the CMO of Vistatec and also the founder of Think Global Forum. So, Simon, is there anything else that I've omitted to include? Because I know you have a lot of titles.
There's many things, but I'm sure we'll maybe unravel them as we go, Paula.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you for coming on to this. And I suppose the main purpose, the reason that Bruno and I decided to start to do this, is primarily to engage with the client side within the industry to help give some guidance and direction and to be as forthright as they're allowed to be or willing to be to help providers and suppliers have much more effective working relationships, because that's what keeps the industries moving. If people get to know, how does it work? How do I get in? How do I get to work with these large organisations? And that's what started the podcast. And I know your situation is not exactly in that. However, I know that you'd have a lot to offer on that topic alone, together with, Bruno assures me, many, many, many other interesting topics.
No,
so let's get started then about, if you're happy to share about you. How did you end up doing this? How did you end up in this industry? What was your path to it? And do you still love it?
Yeah, it's an industry that's changing by the hour, by the minute, literally. You both know that. Maybe I just start and say, look, it's great to be here on the Top Voices podcast. I mean, it is great. I think what you're doing is fantastic. To answer your question, I was in software really before I got into localization. You're going back probably more than 10 years now, almost 11. I worked with Sage, with big, large PLC, lots of customers all over the world, thousands and thousands of people. FTSE 100 company, still is, very well respected. But I was very much in the software space.
Okay.
And I didn't really know an awful lot about localization. I knew we localized our software products. I knew we had customers in countries that didn't speak English as their first language, etc. And it wasn't really until I got involved in the cloud division when we moved from sort of desktop software. Software used to come in boxes with CDs, just for people who may not know that, whereas now it's apps and downloads, right?
Yeah.
But when we moved everything to cloud-based software and subscription as a service and that SaaS model that we all know today, we knew that in order to grow a global business, a business without borders really, localization was key. And I transitioned from software. Prior to that, I was in telecommunications. I was with BT, or British Telecom as it was at the time. I worked for a few joint ventures across Europe. I've worked for companies in the Middle East. I've been involved in startups that we've sold. I've been with NASDAQ listed companies. Far too much detail to go into here. But the localization industry, to me, and you still hear people saying it today, don't you? It's kind of, if you're in it, you kind of know it and you love it. If you're on the outside of it, you kind of go, what's that? And there's still a little bit of a misconception about what it is. And people will talk more about translation and localization. And if you say something like transcreation, or AI dubbing or subtitling, or, it starts to get quite complex very, very quickly. But I do still love it, Paula, to answer your, the other part of your question. I think more so now than ever, because we have gone through a pandemic. Yeah. We saw business prior to the pandemic really good. We saw business during the pandemic really good. I know we're very fortunate. Not everybody saw that. And we continue to grow our business internationally. Yeah. And we work with, very privileged to work with a lot of the biggest brands on the planet. And I don't take that for granted. I'm very fortunate to be in that position, And we have a great group of people that have been working with us now almost for 3 decades. I'm not there 3 decades, I'm only a third of that timeline. But still love it today.
It's interesting that you're considered almost a newbie 10 years in. That's great recognition to Vistatech. It's great acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of knowledge built up in Vistatech. There's, the original founders. A lot of them still there. 4 of the original 5 founders still there. A lot of flat structures. It's very accessible. Agility would be one of our core values, and we are very nimble. We're able to adapt to demand, and I think that's served us well, particularly over the last, say, 4 or 5 years. And even serves us better now as we move into this generative AI and whatever that path leads us down with the new tools and the new workflows, etc. So it's served us well, and we're continuing down that road. But sorry, Paula, you're going to say something there.
No, you've actually answered what was going to be my next question, which is what is unique? What is the one thing that's unique about Vistatech? But I think you've pretty much answered it. And also you actually mentioned the magic 2 letters that I know, Bruno, it's like the AI bingo game. So where Bruno, one of Bruno's jobs in these discussion podcasts is to get for AI in at least once, but we haven't managed to restrict it to just once so far. So, do you want to maybe?
Yeah, I've known Simon for quite some time now, and Vistatech as well. And one thing you were talking about, something unique about Vistatech. I'm not sure if it's unique, but it's very hard to find. It is client-centricity. Client-centricity is very important because Vistatech, like a few suppliers, and I insist, that's my experience, only a few suppliers are like that. There are more than vendors, there are more than suppliers, there are business partners with their clients. And I was going to ask you, Simon, what is your secret recipe? And you're going to say, yeah, if it's secret, I'm not going to tell it, but okay. I'm going to try anyway. What is your secret recipe to make sure to position Vistatech, to maintain Vistatech as a business partner, which is more than a supplier? And the second part of my question is that now, you just said, the industry is changing very quickly, more than ever. And what is your sort of recommendation to, make sure that some topics that are not always very popular, because I remember a few years ago, I was presenting about the evolution from translation localization services to content and data services. Today, everybody talks about it. But of course, a few years ago, I was booed on stages when I was talking about these topics as a client, because I was just saying that in my company, that was what was expected. But I know Vistatech has embraced this strategy of offering content and data services more than ever. So two questions in one. How do you establish and maintain client centricity as a business partner? And how did you manage to really, among many other suppliers, to be one of the first ones to really offer content and data services before many other ones?
There's a lot in there, Bruno. I'll try and be as precise and as succinct as I can be. Obviously, you share a lot of data and knowledge. I read a lot of the stuff that you share, I comment on it, etc. And, the industry is changing. But to answer your question, if I go back a little bit, back to those words, translation, localization. If you were talking to somebody in Vistatech 20, 30 years ago, some of the original people that were there, it was, translating big chunky user manuals for television sets and, whatever came along. Oh, yeah. Very much a translation play. And then it kind of morphed into this thing called an LSP, right? Yeah. And we became localization service providers, and it got a bit more sophisticated. And of course, the tools and the workflows and the processes move on. Vistatech, we took a decision, and this is probably 10, 11 years ago now, when we sort of branded the company. One of the key things we wanted to do was to move away from just being one of the LSPs, Yeah. And we started, I think we were one of the first, if not the first, to call ourselves a global content solutions provider. Exactly. And that's very much what we hang our hat on still today. So we don't really position it very much as a translation play or a localization play. We position it as providing solutions for global content. And global content, whether it's the written word, audio or video or meta or whatever type of content, user-generated content, regulated content, finance, healthcare, whatever, it continues to grow. It continues to expand. We've been, as I say, very fortunate because a lot of our big brands have done particularly well and they continue to grow. But we're also winning new, big, well-known companies, global companies. I suppose we don't focus on small to medium-sized businesses at all. That's not sort of the sweet spot for Vistatech. I know we're not unique in that. But when it comes to that secret sauce, we really try to be the best at what we do. When we reposition the company, when we really look back and did a little bit of soul searching about who are we, it was as though, and the way I described it to the board at the time was, it was as though we had all these ingredients, all these building blocks, but they were a little bit scattered across the landscape. And if we only started stacking a few of these things on top of each other, we had a really great story to tell here. And we've been, trying to do that. I think we've done well in some areas. I'm sure there are improvements we can do in others. But part of that was this customer centricity. Now, a lot of companies say that. A lot of all companies have values and mission statements and everything, and everybody can roll them out. But there's a difference between writing them down in a strategy document and actually executing on them and believing in them and trying to make sure that you endeavor to do the absolute best for the customer, even if at times that doesn't necessarily mean the best for us. And we've had situations like that. It also means making tough decisions and sometimes having to push back to a global brand and say, well, actually, we might not think we're the right fit for you. And, some finance money counters or CEOs might cringe at that a little bit, but you have to be true to your values. You have to be true to who you are. And the last thing in terms of the secret sauce is a really important one. I know you both know Phil Ritchie, the Chief Technology Officer of Vistatech, and we have what's called our Applied Technologies Group. So we kind of have this inbuilt software development center too. And that allows us to be probably a little bit more bespoke than other companies in the industry. So if there's a solution off the shelf, we will be agnostic about it. We'll buy it and put it in. If it's the right solution, if it's the best solution, we've no qualms about doing that. If a solution doesn't exist, however, and you're talking about an international company with, billions in revenue, we'll build something from scratch. And we've done that with some of our very large customers. And that gives us that special relationship, that long-term relationship, because once you're invested at a network level, at a systems level, at a software level, it becomes a much stronger relationship because you've done something that's unique, that's bespoke. It may not be replicated at all for any other client on the planet. And we're very fortunate to have that capability in-house. And we kind of use that agnosticism when it comes to technology solutions. But we also do work with a lot of industry players in our world too. But it depends. We really focus on what's the right thing for the customer. And I think the last thing, if our chief executive was here, Thomas Murray, he'd be saying, well, most of our customers have been with us more than 5 years. And we've got a whole heap of customers that have been with us for more than 10 years. And it is very, very rare. I mean, extremely rare that we will lose a customer. Or if we did, we might have lost a little bit of revenue. And then we typically get it back a few years later when they come back to us because they've tried somebody else. But it's extremely rare. And we continue to win new accounts all the time. We've got a great sales team internationally that do a great job, and we try to support that with our investment in brand, with our marketing strategies, but also making sure that we provide tools and instruments and information to the market, whether that's through forums, think tanks. We have the Think Global Forum that Paula mentioned there a moment ago, whether it's through our own podcast, Vista Talks, our magazines, and we're very active on social. So, we do build up communities in various elements, and we have sub-brands and sub-trademarks to the main Vistatech umbrella brand, which helps us around the world internationally. I hope that gives you some idea anyway.
Yeah.
It does. Can I just ask a question there? What is the worst or the most painful feedback you got after winning an account where you guys felt, like over the years, please don't give names, where you guys, felt that you were being client-centric and suddenly out of the blue, something very painful, feedback happens. And if you were looking back at the situation, what could have been done differently? And please don't give names.
That's a real tough one though, Paula, because I'm struggling to think where we've got bad feedback. We do a global barometer survey to our customers, and we have two surveys. One, if you've been with us for 12 months or 18 months or longer, that kind of time period. Mm-hmm. And that's quite an in-depth survey that we give to all our customers. But we also give a slightly different survey to people that have been with us less than that sort of 12, 18 month period. So that really covers their onboarding process.
Okay.
And we get a lot of value out of that. We've been doing that now for many, many years. So we've got a data trend of built up. So we can see at a moment's notice if there's a pain point or, as we'd like to call it, an opportunity to improve an area. But something where we might just get a little bit of feedback, and we invite people in that survey. They can do it anonymously, and a lot of customers choose to do that because they want to we want to get the raw feedback. When somebody tells us we're doing a great job, it makes us feel good, but we don't actually learn anything from it. When people say, well, actually, you could do this a little bit better, you could do that a little bit better. So we built this instrument, this barometer, that we push out regularly to our customer base. So we collect all this rich data, and then what we do with that is, and I will come back to your question because I know I've gone off tangent a little bit, but it's just, I think, a really interesting point that getting that pulse of the customer is so important. And we then pour over that. We have an internal presentation. We share it with the entire company. We let different departments know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we can improve upon. And we also then sit down at a board level and we review what are the actions that we're going to put together this financial year, for example, to improve on this, to improve on that. And just because people are saying, you're doing great here, 5 stars here, etc., we always try to say, well, what would make that even better? So even where we have the feedback where it's not going well, we try to do that. The only one I can think of, Paul, if I'm being totally honest, is we had one client, and I'm going back quite a few years now. We had one client that one of their people, not that we, various people in their company got the survey, but one of their people said something along the lines of, I thought you could be a little bit more innovative in what you're doing for us. And it kind of knocked me for 6 because I went, you must be kidding here.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing some of the most cutting edge things in the industry. And that's a defensive way of thinking about it. When actually, when we pause and breathe, we have to look back at ourselves and say, well, what's causing that? How can we better communicate this volume of innovation that we've actually got here at Vistatech? Because this person, and if it's only one person, that one person counts. This one person isn't receiving that message. So we need to figure out why that's the case. Because other people within that account were getting that message and were singing the praises. But this one person who was, important, had taken the time to fill in our global barometer, wasn't feeling it. And so we adjusted that specifically for that customer. And we had internal meetings to say, well, why did that come across? We didn't let ourselves off the hook. It would have been very easy for us to say, but they're 99.9% happy. And I think that, coming back to your question, Bruno, I think that also is a bit of a differentiator. It's easy to say that you put the customer at the center, as I said earlier. Yeah. It's a different thing altogether to actually deliver on it. And delivering on it is what we do. We're very proud of the work that we do. We're very proud of our customers. And without sort of blowing the trumpet too much, we kind of feel a little bit sometimes like we're the place where you go to when you've got a really difficult problem and maybe you can't get it answered somewhere else in the industry. And I know that sounds very self-serving, but there is a little bit of that going on too. Because we've been around for 3 decades, we've got that benefit, we've got that group think, we've got the experience and the expertise, and we're working at the cutting edge of global content solutions. So it's kind of a nice situation to be in. And again, I don't take that for granted. As I said earlier, it's a very fortunate position that Vistatech's in, and long may it continue.
There's obviously a lot of work on into training with your people, which has to be admired, because getting people to participate in surveys Oh my goodness, I'm as old as the mountains, and the number of different, I've hired experts to help me, I've hired external people, internal people, and it's very difficult to get people to participate. And I know it's largely down to the relationship management. But well done on that one.
Yeah, no, exactly. And well, first of all, I really like the way you explained, why and how, the pulse of clients had to be taken on a regular basis, not just, once every, years, whatever, but on a regular basis, so that you can maintain centricity, not just create centricity, but maintain it. It's a bit like people. Sometimes it's easy to recruit people. It's more difficult to retain them. But okay, that's just a comment on what you just said. But then going back to centricity in action, not just in words. You said that, of course, execution was key. And I understood, but correct me if I'm wrong, I understood that one of your ingredients of the secret sauce was the leadership in Vistatech. So you mentioned, of course, there is yourself. You mentioned Phil, Thomas. As I've been working a lot on the client side, I noticed when I was in a bid defense, when I was facing, the management or the leadership team of a supplier, that sometimes, the SVP sales was not totally on the same page as the SVP operations, for instance. So can you tell us more about how you yourself, but also with Thomas, with Phil, how you make sure that you are all synchronized to offer a solution that is not just relevant, but that is also, consistent for the client, that the client sees that you at Vistatech, you have the leadership that makes you work together and, that all of you look in the same direction.
It's a great question. And the word that sprang to mind as you were asking it there, Bruno, was the word quality. And I think it's the fact that we hold quality extremely high. And that helps bond us all together because we strive only for the best. Now, if you go back to our recruitment policies, for example, we have quite an onerous process for people to go through. Let's say if you're an agency or if you're a linguist or a freelancer or something, you want to work with us maybe on a contracted basis somewhere around the world. It can be quite difficult to work with Vistatech, because we are very, very clear on the expertise that we need. Our clients, in a lot of cases, require very high level of expertise. They require people that live in country, that have that, language. They live and breathe the culture. It's not enough to be a good translator. It's not good enough to have to be good at the language industry or to have worked in another localization service provider. That's not enough. What's really important is that if we have a client who are trying to really come up with this global campaign or to move a new product set or service, and we really focus on moving the bottom line for them. And we know that. So whether it's our service department, whether it's our sales team, whether it's our marketing department, whether it's our finance operation, we're all very aware of that quality pulling us all together. Because if you are trying to make a difference in a particular part of the world, I was reading something on it yesterday about, the amount of speakers. I think it was from Clear Global, Translators Without Borders. New York, 200 languages. Half the population doesn't speak English. 25% of the population in New York doesn't speak English at home, for example. And we take that level of quality to the nth degree because we want somebody that lives, breathes, operates in that culture. Because we know that if we can get that combined with linguistic talent, combined with an understanding of translation and localization, combined with a natural ability within languages, combined with qualifications, that's really the best outcome for our customers. It's not easy to do. We do that with our hires. We're not a brand that likes to talk about being the biggest. So it's very rare you'll hear Vistatech saying, "Oh, we've got this many offices and follow the sun. We do all that stuff, right? We've got operations all over the world. Of course we do. We've built up a nice pool of people that work with us. About 10,000 people work with us around the world in different parts of time. We've got 300 or 400 people that manage the operations behind the scenes, internationally. And so it's quite a big organic machine. But ultimately it comes back to, again, getting back to your question, how do you hold that together? It comes back to, what do you believe in? What kind of company do we want to be? Because ultimately that resonates out, that ripples out into the ecosystem that is Vistatech around the world, how we're perceived at conferences, how we're perceived at events, how we're perceived in the service that we offer, how we're perceived when we provide feedback, how we're perceived with the fast turnaround that we can provide, delivering that bespoke software solution for a client. All those little things add up. And I know it's kind of not a very fashionable thing to say, but the small things matter.
Oh, yeah.
They really matter to customers. And if you, again, back to that analogy I used earlier, if you start stacking those bricks up, it really supports the brand. It supports who you are. People feel proud of working for the company. I had somebody actually contact me today via our online system in-house saying, I'm 8 years with the company next year. Would you design some imagery for us in marketing? Because I'd love to shout about it on my own social media. And that to me is a great testament to somebody who's really proud about the fact that they've been with us for 8 years now. I think that kind of thing, helps me just focus on how important that feeling is, that you're proud to work at Vistatech. And not everybody stays. Some people go, but we've got probably, our HR director, our chief HR officer, Siobhan Gantley, he's very proud of the fact that we've got one of the highest retention rates in the industry. We've got a lot of people that just love working for us. Of course people move on, of course people retire, etc. But when you're around for 30 years, that's a really good testament to have,
You use the word perception there a lot. It's interesting because I think that people underestimate the importance of perception. And I don't know if you know of Porter's 5 forces. So Porter identified, obviously you've had business training, so it's one of those things that are taught at sort of Business 101. And it actually, Porter identified what he felt were the 5 pillars, the 5 main pillars of that are important for a business to be successful and to thrive. And I remember I was very lucky to be at a course out in Babson in Massachusetts. So it's years ago, it's many, many years ago. And I was speaking to the professors there. And funnily enough, I think there's one that was missed. And I think the one that was missed is perception. Because I think it really matters to a business's ability to survive and thrive. I'm just throwing in...
as long as it isn't perception for the sake of looking good, right? So obvious, yeah.
I know that, but
how people perceive you is so important. It's like the saying, isn't it? What is a brand? Well, it's what people say about you when you aren't in the room, right? So that's the perception that you leave somebody with. Rightly or wrongly, they're going to make up their mind about who you are.
Yeah.
And the only way you can reflect that outwards is by actually being true to what you believe in.
Deliver.
To having quality, to having agility, to, always speaking the truth, to over-delivering, to, those are the core fundamentals. They don't sound very cool in this world of AI and, high tech and crazy stock markets, etc. But they're so important. They are the business fundamentals, and maybe that's some of the things that humans bring to the table.
I'm not trying to disqualify the evident signs, but I think being the best kept secret in any industry must be a nightmare. It must be.
I think so. Yeah. I think we were. If I'd be totally honest with you, Paula, Vistatech was a little bit like that. If you go back maybe 10, 15 years, it was kind of like doing really well and growing, but
nobody knew.
Maybe it wasn't not advertising it, not shouting about itself, but maybe it could have been doing a better job to communicate its capabilities. And I hope in some small way we're doing that a little bit better today.
Yeah, no, I feel like that every day about my company, that I need to find a better way. Anyway.
Yeah, and well, actually, this is a very interesting topic, talking about branding and brands. And going back to my years in business school for my master in marketing, I remember there was a presentation from a company, and they titled their presentation about branding, Emotion and Motion. And actually, it was about creating, of course, branding is about creating an emotional relationship with customers, but at the same time, it was the ability to move with clients, which is the motion part of the title. And I'm just curious, with all your experience in Vistatech and even before Vistatech, what was the main challenge to actually keep the branding, not to create it, but to keep the branding relevant over time?
Yeah, it's another great question, and I think the branding of Vistatech, we really stripped it back. At one point, when I joined the organization, initial feeling was that we should change the name. Now that didn't go down too well with a couple of the board, as you can imagine. But that was my initial thoughts. I'm talking early weeks. Okay. So I hadn't done 100 days. I hadn't been around. And I started doing what I normally do, which is the research and the understanding and talking to customers, more importantly. And what you suddenly realize is that it meant something. And not only did it mean something, but there was that emotional connection that people had to it. And what it meant was a positive. What it meant was a relationship. And ultimately, it came down to the word trust. People trusted Vistatech to do the job. And that became literally flipping a coin for me, because it was as though, the cogs turned, the penny dropped. And I went, there's real value here. So it actually isn't the name, because despite itself, we've done really well because of the great work we've been doing. Imagine what we can do if we actually do the other stuff well as well. So if we continue to do great work with clients, but maybe we do a little bit better at how we position ourselves in the marketplace. And, I think we've done pretty well. Now, I've got a great team as well. It's not one person's job. And of course, the board has to come along to that. But we stripped it right down. We redesigned the logo. We redesigned everything about Vistatech. The actual Vistatech diamond now is because it represents quality. The cut of the shapes in the logo means something. It's as though you've cut a diamond, and every shape of the Vistatech logo, if you look at it, it has 3 different color shadings within the logo. And each side represents that sort of quality level and the multifaceted nature of what we do. So we didn't take this lightly. This was months and months of heavy brain power, working with some of the world's leading thinkers in this area, and really thinking about how we position it. And that manifests it to today, Bruno, where, we recently released something called the Executive's Guide to Localization.
Of course.
Which we thought was kind of important, because some people are coming to localization brand new. Some people have been around for years. AI needs to be covered as a topic, of course. But we wanted to sort of put something out there that was kind of a bit of an industry guide. It's a light read, but it's out there, and being able to provide that level of information. And we also wanted to provide a tool that helped people, particularly, and you guys know this, where in some companies, large companies, maybe they've laid off some people, and they're struggling a little bit, and some of the localization team has been thinned out a little bit, or the people working with LSPs or global solution providers like Vistatech. And so they need the ammunition, they need the reasoning and the rationale, so they can engage with their own C-suite to say, hey, this is why we need this. This is why it's important. This is how it helps us grow international revenue. This is how it impacts profits to the bottom line. This is why it's good for shareholders. So we just wanted to put some of that together, but we wouldn't have been able to do that, to answer your question, going back to your question, unless we stripped back that brand, unless we really went back. I mean, we went back down to nothing. We went back down to the name, the logo, absolutely everything. And we rebuilt it from the ground up. But the thing that we kept was the brand trust. The brand trust was there, and that was there before I got there, because the company had done such a good job with the customers that it had. It had built up the reputation of excellence. It had built up a quality reputation, and it had shown its ability to dig deep and to provide solutions that customers wanted. And something that you also said that stuck with me is, how do you, companies are moving forward all the time, and how do you keep up with that?
Yeah.
And we changed our thinking on that, because customers, of course, want the solution, because these big global brands, they're always doing something new. There's always something happening in there. There's always a change. There's always a leadership change. There's always a new budget. There's always a new industry to go after, or a new market, or a new product or service. But what we need to do is be ahead of that curve. It's not good enough for Vistatech to turn up and say, here's how we handle that for you. It's Vistatech's job to be able to do that as business as usual, but to turn up and say, and you probably need to be looking at this, and you probably need to be looking at that, and have you considered this? Because that's where we add that thought leadership value. And a lot of people, in fact, most people in our industry don't do that. They stop at the providing the answer. And that's not enough for these global brands.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, because since we are now here in Lock World, during lunchtime, I was having a few conversations sometimes with veterans, sometimes with newbies, and they were asking me, what is the main reason why sometimes, people consider you as, thinking too far ahead. And I told them, I'm never thinking too far ahead. I'm thinking the way it should be. Sometimes it is not too far ahead. Sometimes it has to be too far ahead. Because to your words, you cannot survive in this industry, or probably in any industry, without anticipation and without, just using or trusting. I mean, I'm going to use the verb, which is great. Trust is key. Trusting what customers really need, even if it's not popular in the industry as itself. And going back to my example of content solutions, or language data, which I did last year. I remember I did a micro talk at Lock World US, and there were a handful of people in the audience. And my micro talk was about the importance and how to create language data for AI. Not just data, but language data, which is a specific sort of data. And I did that with pleasure. And I had, of course, some great conversation with just a handful of people, but I didn't take it personally, because I know this topic is important for AI, and specifically for generative AI. I told people, how can you expect generative AI to work properly if there is no good, when I say good, usable, relevant language data? Forget about it, generative AI is not something coming from above or out of the blue. You have to do it. You have to create it. You have to care about it. And to your point, I think you're right. It's critical. It's vital, I would say, as a business, just to anticipate and sometimes go into fields that are not so popular, but those fields are where clients expect you to be.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, Bruno. And I think you've raised a great point, particularly with data. And I know you mentioned that a little while ago. I was only in a conversation yesterday with somebody about the deals being done in the marketplace with companies that are sitting on a lot of data. There are very large media players, for example, that they're licensing their content now to these AI, whether it's OpenAI or Google or Microsoft or whoever. And getting the data, as you well know, Bruno, into the right structure where it becomes useful data. A lot of people are missing that at the moment. Yeah. Just because you're sitting on a mountain of data doesn't mean it's going to help you. It's the treatment of that data. It's organizing that data to making it relevant. And then once it becomes relevant and once it becomes useful, then you've got a competitive advantage. And some of the smart CEOs know that, and some of the smart companies are moving ahead in that area. And also coming back to something else that you said about being slightly ahead of the customer. Everybody talks about being client focused, so do we. And we talk about delivering on on what the client needs. But we take it a step further. We don't really put all our attention on the actual solution, because everybody does that. Everybody tell you they've got a great solution. Everybody will come up with a PowerPoint deck, etc. We try to move the dial for the client's outcome. So the first question you'll get from Vistatech is, well, what are you trying to do? Why do you want to do that? Why is that important to your business? And I think because we go at it from that way, again, we're probably not unique in that, but we really drive down into delivering really positive outcomes for our clients. And then, of course, we don't get into that solutions mix straight away, because we know we can back that up. We'll either get something in or we'll build something. But we want to have a conversation about, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do that? How is that important to your business strategy this year? Why is that important to the board? How are you measured on that? What does success look like for you? And measuring that client outcome, really, really important. And you can't do that. I suppose you can, but I think it's very hard to do that if you're not providing that thought leadership, if you're not ahead of the industry, if you're not doing things that maybe are a little bit different, if you're not thinking differently. And it takes that industry expertise, that willingness to move forward. And I suppose because we're probably one of the few left privately held companies, a lot of our competitors, if you want, in inverted commas, have sort of, there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions over the last number of years. We still see that carrying on today. A lot of them are beholden to the stock market. Now, I've worked with companies, PLCs, I've worked with listed organizations, whether it's been the NASDAQ or the FTSE, and I understand what that's like. But there is something really nice about being a privately held company, because we can make decisions like that. We can spin this thing, spin it up really, really quickly. We can get into providing solutions for customers that don't exist today. And that's really, really good for us. So we do have that sort of nimble agility to be able to do that. So I hope that covered maybe some of the points that we've been touching on there.
It's actually, there's a very strong parallel between what you've said there and individuals that I've seen over the years that can't quite understand why am I not a director? Why am I not in charge of whatever, either portfolio or people? And it's just some individuals and some organisations are 100% task oriented, and the leaders are results oriented. So it's parallel to what you've just said, that your organisation is, I've probably a little oversimplified it there, but you are results oriented for your clients.
Yeah, very much so. We're very much results orientated for our clients. That's really the key one for us, as opposed to maybe if you are too beholden to others, it becomes quite difficult.
I agree. Have you actually spoken enough about the famous AI?
Yeah, well, of course, AI had to be in the conversation, and actually, I'm going to ask you a question about AI, but just connected to something that you just said about solutions. When you talk to a client, you want first to understand, well, two major questions. What are your issues? What are your problems we can help you solve? And why would you choose us, among the hundreds of the dozens of suppliers? And it's actually interesting. I was talking to a newbie in the lobby now, in the hotel here, and he was telling me, wow, Bruno, I'm really impressed. This is my first localization conference, and I see so many suppliers, and I'm as a potential client, I wouldn't know which one to go to, even, to create a shortlist. And I told him, well, you know what? Please make sure that this potential supplier asks, before doing anything else, before presenting any PowerPoint, that this supplier, this potential supplier asks you, how can I help you? What are your issues? And why did you come to us first sight, just to understand what was the sort of emotional, maybe it's purely emotional, or maybe it's very rational. Why did you come to us to figure out if we could help you solve your issues? And AI is a very interesting case now, because everybody talks about AI. There are many new AI companies. They just replaced .com by .ai. That's that's a very interesting move in the tech industry. But okay, I've seen that before in digital transformation. For you in Vistatech, how in this AI sort of in this AI infused environment now we are living in, how do you make sure that your existing customers, but also your new customers or your leads, understand that Vistatech can help them not just use AI, because I think that there are so many companies that can do that, but use AI in a relevant way. In other words, use AI when it creates value, or not use AI when it doesn't create value. So how can you be different, and how can you stand out by using best practices in client centricity, if I can use that term again?
Can I also add on to that, which probably make your answer's probably going to take about 3 days. But how, as well, when you're, speaking with organisations, whether they've approached you or you've approached them, your clients, how do you work it present it in such a way so that AI is not weaponised to cut the profit out of any of your pitch? You can tell my background. I was going to be a partner in a firm of accountants a long time ago. So I'm inclined to work backwards from a P&L in my head.
Very good. Well, I think maybe if I consider the approach to those questions, AI is the new kid on the block, right? If you buy into the Gartner hype cycle stuff, we're probably still in the hype growth phase of it. Maybe we're coming towards the top. Who knows? At the time of recording, if the NVIDIA stock price is anything to go by, and the valuation of the company overtaking Apple in terms of their net worth, their revenues, it is incredible what we're seeing with AI and how it's really impacted a lot of people around the world, and will continue to do so. I was listening to Sir Martin Sorrell, who was one of the original founders of WPP, the world's largest advertising company, and he made a great point recently here in Dublin. He said that people just don't get it. People just aren't getting it yet. And I'm a little bit like that. I don't think we've seen anything yet. I think it is literally. We're seeing the tip of what's coming, There's an awful lot to happen here. Now, I'm not a doomsayer either. I'm a big supporter of AI for good. I think there's an awful lot of positives that are coming out of it. I was only reading a report yesterday about the amount of positive work that's being done, particularly in the healthcare sector, and that's something that's very close to Vistatech, because we have a Vistatech Life Sciences division that we've invested in quite heavily. And so when you talk about AI for clients and you talk about, how do you make that unique? Well, AI for life sciences, for medtech, for healthcare, that's a heavily regulated industry, and the regulations aren't the same depending on where you are on the planet. So it's not good enough to say, well, we'll just use AI for that. That just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So the same in financial. You were talking about financials there a minute ago, Paula, and the same in the financial world, right? It's heavily regulated, and it's regulated to larger or lesser degrees depending where you are on the planet. And the rules are always changing. So I think when it comes to Vistatech's ability to help people, particularly in regulated industries and non-regulated industries, of course, but in regulated industries, to show our expertise there of where we're at with the technology today, what it can do, where it can help, and where it definitely can't. And where it definitely can't isn't because it's Vistatech saying it. It's because Vistatech have proven the model. We have used it to within its limits. And we have got to the point where we say, yes, it's okay, or no, it's not. And that depends on the solution for the client. We also have, a great example would be something we launched fairly recently called Vistatech Speech, which is a new product to the market. It's only out this year, and it's AI-powered platform, I suppose, for automatic dubbing and processes, and it helps customers because it does cut a bit of the cost out. It is enterprise grade, it is very, very scalable for this dub content. But the way we're positioning that is it's been able to scale, take a little bit of cost out, but not compromise on the quality. because we still have to have humans, we all know the term humans in the loop at this stage, but we do have to have linguistic and language experts that maybe are either regulated or non-regulated industries, but also industry experts behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Because it isn't okay in a lot of cases to just hand that content back over, because we all know where we're at with AI. Mm-hmm. Some are better than others. We have built things ourselves. Our CTO, Phil Ritchie, who I mentioned earlier, very, very proud of the fact that we were one of the first companies in the industry to provide AI access to all our employees. But we did that in a sandboxed environment where no customer data went into AI models, no client data can be used to train the trained data, and it was done in a private test environment. Now, we're very fortunate, again, to have that ability to do that. But whether it's partnering with people and providing new things like Vistatech Speech, which we're hoping to revolutionize a little bit, this global dubbing and how AI can help companies do that. Because, back to that video content, the explosion of video content, the need to do things quickly, translation jobs 20, 30 years ago, it was a few jobs here or there. Now it's thousands of jobs a week coming in and real time. And humans can't, humans can't keep up with the volume of work that's required. Yeah. You need the machines to be able to assist. You need to build dashboards, machines and workflows to be able to do that. And Vistatech does that. We build our own systems to enable us to work with large client requirements where you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of requirements on a daily basis. And if you multiply that by all the clients that we have and all the places in the world that they are located, it gets very, very big, very quickly behind the scenes. And using AI, we're pro AI, but not to the point where we would say it's AI only. We're not there yet.
No.
We're certainly not there yet. We're very strong believers that you need a language expert in the loop here. You need somebody that knows what they're doing. At this time, ask me that question in 5-10 years' time, who knows? But I think today, businesses need to be very, very careful because the level of knowledge and understanding as well, we find is very different in clients, customers and prospects. They're coming at it at completely different levels of understanding. Some C-suites might think, we can cut a load of cost here. Others go, we definitely can't do that because that's going to impact us. And it only takes a few things to go wrong if you trust everything to the machines, and all of a sudden you're in a whole world of pain. So it's careful, it's considered, which are two words that don't really go with cutting edge AI and the excitement that's out there. But you have to be careful and considered, and you have to really get back to that quality word that I threw in a little while ago. Our customers trust us to make sure that we know what we're talking about here. That's the trust we've built up with them. We can't let them down. And we want to make sure that whether we're providing you with an AI solution, which we do today for lots of clients, or whether we're providing you with a pure human solution, which we do today for lots of clients, that it is the best solution for your requirements. It delivers on quality. It's a cost-effective solution for you. And it's also scalable. So we can adapt it as we go. It's not... we don't have to retrofit this thing. We can continue to scale up as and when we need to. So we have those sort of processes in place. Our customers tend to grow with us organically anyway. That's kind of how we work with AI at the moment. It does help having some great AI people on the team, I must say. Yeah. We've got some very deep thinkers on the team that help us with this. And we do a lot of cross-industry discussions too, to make sure that we are not only have our finger on the pulse, but hopefully a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah. No, I really like the way you put it and the way you say that, obviously, you have to be cautious. You have to be sensible, simply. Paula, you highlighted in your question also the fact that a number of organizations across industries, I think, they rushed. They really rushed, like in the gold rush. They rushed to AI. And I heard those words like, we are going to play with AI. We're going to test AI. We're going to pilot AI. And when you ask them, what is your business goal? we'll see later. And that's really where you put effectiveness before readiness. And, I keep saying that now, to your point, and I totally agree with you, I think that there is, first of all, there is a big challenge in making organizations ready for AI. And when I say making them ready, I'm not just talking about technology, ecosystems, I'm talking about people. You said that you created a sandbox, which is great. I heard the same in some other companies on the client side. And this is the best way to educate people, to tell them or to show them what it is and what it's not, so that they can, see it live, not just as a concept up in the air. And so readiness is very important, so that you can, as a business and as a person, you can walk before you can run. Because, I think that there's, certainly since the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, there has been some sort of, I call them the rapids of AI. It's a bit like, you are in a river and you just, you have to let you guide with the stream, and everybody goes in the same direction. And very few people are asking questions. They are just doing things sometimes without, like a chicken without a head. And I think that, if I can use that term, that image. But Simon, I have a question for you. Don't you think, and you tell me if you agree or not, but don't you think that there is now, as we speak, there is a missed opportunity for the language industry to be, to take the right share of the pie, which is called AI, and to really value the language expertise? Whereas, of course, you have some organizations, and I was speaking to some directors of one of the big 4 consultancies in the world, and they were telling me that in their organization, they were actually giving the control of AI, including generative AI, to data scientists. And I told them, but what about, your language data in French, in English, in Spanish? And the answer was, but we have multilingual data scientists. So, don't you think that the language industry is not too slow now to really say to the data scientist world, we should really work with you because you have the data expertise, we have the language expertise, and if we join our forces, our expertise, we can really have some great readiness, great data. It seems to me that there are too few players in the language industry that are really willing to be, be the partner in crime of the data scientist community. Because obviously, just like a multilingual data scientist is not a linguist, a data-oriented linguist is not a data scientist. So I think that there is an opportunity to merge and create a lot of value by working together. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that?
I think you've hit on a really important point, and that point, it comes back to something Paula said a little while ago as well, that sometimes you can be a great hidden secret or an answer to something that people don't know about. And there is sort of the highly technical data scientific approach to it, and then you've got, the way you were putting it there, Bruno, you've kind of got all this language expertise over here. And never the twain shall meet. But, you have to merge that. And unfortunately, I think maybe a little bit is because it doesn't get the voice that it needs to internally within an organization. Maybe it's not empowered to. Maybe the budget's been cut a little bit, or the senior person that was there is no longer there. So, there's more responsibility and pressure pushed down onto other people. And it's a little bit about realizing, and people like Vistatech's ability to communicate to companies, to organizations, to say, hey, you're sitting on not only a wealth of talent yourself, but we've got a wealth of talent over here. And if we combine that with this new technology, you're going to be streets ahead of your competition. Now, it's easy for me to say, but when we're talking to our customers and our prospects today about AI, we're talking about things like, faster turnaround times. We're talking about being able to provide quality with AI. But we're also talking about being able to do that with human reviewers, going through the outputs to make sure, and the QA process for that being extremely important. But we're also talking about maybe democratizing things a little bit, being able to level the playing field a little bit to give people access to these new tools. But it's very hard to come at it without a deep understanding of the industry that we're in, because it can get very technical very, very quickly. And it can lose the sense of what actually, I think you coined it perfectly a little while ago, Bruno. You said, what's the goal? What's the strategy? We did see, didn't we, lots of companies baking in AI into every product set that they have. And then the customers going, well, what do I use this for? And the companies went, well, we've no idea either, but we just had to build it in. So we've kind of taken a slightly different approach. We've kind of built customer solutions that we know people need and want and are asking us for. We've tested them rigorously to make sure we know that they do what they say on the tin. But then we back that up with human experts. And I think that's what's given us a differentiator today. Your question about, I suppose it's a land grab. It's who's going to hoover up that pie, that part of the pie that's available at the moment. And I think as a company in this space, it's important that you talk to educational facilities. It's important that we, back to what we're talking about, taking the pulse of the customer and understanding what your customer requirements are, but also thinking a little bit about the future. And we work with a number of futurists to think a little bit down the road. And this goes back to, prior to my localization career, where even in the telecommunication days and the digital days and the advent of, the explosion of the internet, or the digital superhighway, as we called it back then, having futurists that worked with me that could say, well, here's where we think the market's going to be in 5 or 10 years' time. And that's kind of important too, because it gives you a little bit of a North Star. So you can help customers come with you down that journey. You don't have to have all the areas, because anything can change. It's one of the reasons why we set up the Think Global Forum 8 or 9 years ago, because we wanted to build a think tank. I know you've spoken at the Think Global Forum, Bruno, on a number of occasions, and these are sort of in-person conversations where we invite people to come. We have speakers to talk about topics, but as you know, what then happens is people get to network and discuss the topics at length and ask questions of the panel, but then afterwards, we have a lockdown boardroom session that we don't record. We shut the cameras off, we shut the recording equipment off, and we get into the nitty gritty around a boardroom table to really talk about opportunities and challenges. And that's where some of the magic happens. And that's where some of that sort of, I think that's really the unique proposition to the Think Global Forum.
I agree.
But, again, bringing it back on track, I think there is an opportunity for people to do this, but there's also a hesitancy, because some people just rush in, try and hoover up market share, try to be seen as the people that are leading it. They will make horrendous mistakes, and we may or may not hear from them again. And there's a little bit of over-promising going on in the market, I think, at the moment. There's a little bit of, let's just get out there and make it happen. There are thousands and thousands of small companies that are also bringing solutions to the market that shouldn't be ignored. And I think there's a great opportunity for maybe adding some of that brain power into your organization, maybe partnering with some more people in the space. And also, of course, ourselves hiring the right people, retaining the best minds in the industry to be able to provide these solutions to the customers. But then again, there's a little bit, and I'll end on this point to this question, but there is still quite a black box effect to AI, because for everything we know today and for all the tests that anybody on the planet does, something else can be released tomorrow by Sam Altman and the team that we had no idea was coming. So we do have to be a little bit wary of that. But ultimately, when you're dealing with companies that are multi-billion-dollar revenue companies that have a global presence, that have been shipping products or services around the world for many, many years, you need to get this right for them. And we take an excited approach to AI, but also a sensible approach and an experienced approach to AI. So when we put an AI solution to a client, it works, it's robust, they're happy with it, it scales. And whether that's AI alone, whether it's AI and human, or whether it's something completely new and bespoke that we put in place for somebody. And I think that's kind of the approach that we take to it. And, having that sort of expertise and in some cases partnering with other people to bring that expertise to the market, that's something that really helps Vistatech. And I think it's something our customers like too.
Mm. Mm. Okay, I think we might need to start wrapping this up a little, so we'll be here all day. I suppose a question that I have, completely non-work related, is what keeps you sane? What do you do outside work? People that are very passionate about what they do, it can become all-consuming. But how come you're still standing, you still look happy and healthy, so what keeps you sane?
Yeah, I think it's so important, and it's a real human question, isn't it? We've kind of gone through the AI questions, but
that's it.
Look, I think ultimately it comes down to family, it comes down to friends, it comes down to your children, your loved ones, it comes down to your relationships. I think a big part of it for me comes down to what you feed your mind. Taking time out is really important, and I know a lot of executives don't do that enough. It can become a little bit of a treadmill, particularly if I, put my CMO hat on for a minute. Marketing can become very task wheel orientated.
Yeah.
Do this, do that. We need this, we need that. Where are the leads? Build the brand. Do this. We're launching that. It can be very task orientated. The problem with that is unless you have outside interests, unless you have downtime, it's not very conducive for a creative environment.
I agree.
So some of the most creative environments, I like to paint.
Are you good at it?
Well, depends who you ask. But I think when I walk around an art gallery, for example, the reason why I bring up painting, if I walk around an art gallery, it can be a very creative time for me because it allows me that sort of brain time to think about something else. Some people get that from listening to music, right? Or going out and socializing or whatever, being on holiday, really important things, being able to think about things differently, to be able to give yourself time to pause is so important. It's very important in the creative area. It's very important in the marketing world. Because if you're just constantly chasing tasks or constantly doing the work, there's always another email, there's always another to-do list, there's always something else. Unless you put time aside to say, I need to breathe, I need to think, I need to ponder, I need to reflect. Again, not very cool things to say, but they're the things that actually move the dial. I could spend every working hour on things that are urgent. But what I need to do is focus on things that are important, because it's the important things, the strategic things that make the difference. The urgent things very rarely make the difference. They just make a lot of noise. And I think, focusing on the things that move the needle, that move the ball down the field, whatever analogy you want to use, those important things take time. They need to be thought about. They need to be planned. You need to take a few risks. I think you touched on that earlier. And you need to move forward. And you can't do that if you're constantly on that task wheel that I described. So, for me, it's I love to get out on the boat. I love being out on the water. I'm very fortunate to live near the coast. I've got children. That kind of keeps you busy to some degree. But you do have to be able to value the time away from the keyboard, the time away from the meetings, the time away from the Zoom calls. You do have to put a value on that too, because that's actually where you become more creative, you become more thoughtful, you have those sort of breakthrough moments. Whether it's, Steve Jobs or Einstein, they'd often go for a walk when they're talking because it just gets you out of the current way of thinking. And the corporate world today, as you well know, Paula, it's everybody's busy. Everybody's probably doing 3 jobs instead of 1. Everybody's constantly bombarded on their devices. They're all pinging and whirring at the best of times. And it's very easy for me to say, well, just put some time aside. Some people don't have that in their work environment, you know. But ultimately, I think I would say that having those things outside are as important as the things you do inside, because without the balance, you're truly lost. You know, you can't continually grow and grow and grow. People think they can, but you hit the wall. You can't do it forever. You know, I've been the executive. I've flown around the world. I think one of my worst years, I spent 2 weeks in the country I live in and 50 weeks in the air. Sounds very glamorous, but it's city, it's airport, it's leaving in darkness, it's board meetings. And it sounds great, you know, we've got a corporate jet and all that stuff. It doesn't mean anything. You know, what means more is, am I doing what I want to do? Have I got time to do the things outside of work that are important? Because they're what make you effective in work, you know? And I think maybe we undervalue that a little bit in society. I think one of the good things, if anything good came out of the pandemic, I think people really reflect now about how they want to work, where they want to work, the type of work they want to do. And I think things like remote work or hybrid working or being able to work from pretty much anywhere on the planet has been a great opportunity for many, many people. And I think if people have considered maybe a little bit about, I'm not going back to the way I was working before the pandemic. A lot of people have dropped that nightmare commute out of their schedule. I think that's really important too. So a few human answers there for you.
That's okay. No, I agree with it all. There's a few other things as well that I'd add into that. I suppose a number of senior executives, particularly over the last sort of 12 or 18 months, would have come to me to sit, you know, to have conversations about what to do next, what will I do next. And some people are restricted because they're not young enough yet to retire, and they still have financial commitments that go hand in hand with just day-to-day living, children, mortgages and all that stuff. And what I find a little concerning is the amount of cynicism in some of these individuals. Extremely good, decent, nice human beings, both genders, all genders, I should say. And because of the lack of freedom that they've had, and this is going to sound very woo-woo, and I'm the furthest thing from woo-woo you'll ever meet, but the freedom for their souls, when they had been banging the corporate drum for years, and suddenly they're gone. So it has actually just enhanced the sense of cynicism around, my God, I'm not working for this again, but I have to work, and on and on and on. Anyway, I'm actually in principle agreeing with what you've said, but
I think a lot of people became, and maybe still are to some degree, their job is almost their identity. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be, because, ultimately it's a part of your life. It's a big part of your life, but it can't be your identity. I don't think that's a healthy place to be. You know, it's part of who you are. It's not actually the whole of who you are.
I also would suggest that it's a vanity that we employers need to drop. If we feel that it's wonderful that I own a small company, but I think it's a vanity that employers need to drop. That there's nothing to be proudful about if your employees see their identity as their work. But I think an awful lot of employers struggle to let that go. They want machines.
You know this better than I do, Paula, but one of the things that I've seen change dramatically, and for the good, is that what a company stands for now is more important to people that we're hiring. What do we stand for? What do we believe in? What's our policy on this? What's our policy on that? Because people want to work for people that do things the right way, that believe in their people, that act with integrity, that are honest. And that doesn't mean that you're a pushover, that all the answers are yes. Yeah. That doesn't mean that at all. What it means is we act with integrity, we're honest, we'll deal with you very, very clearly and concisely. And if you can then build on the fact that it's a nice place to work and people enjoy working, that's great.
But do you know as well, the irony of that is that from a purely commercial perspective, those type of organisations are more sustainable. because they can retain staff, because they can have staff that would build proper long-term relationships with clients, which then, of course, enhances the engagement from clients and sort of recurring revenue and all that stuff. Anyhow, sorry, I'm now definitely going on and on.
It's a really important point, Paula, and I think that, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking quite a while ago now about, Chief HR Officer Siobhan Ganley. She's very proud of our retention rate in the industry. A lot of people just stay working with Vistatech. They like the environment, and of course, there's always the exception to the rule. It's not for everybody, but
no, I know
we're very. I'll give you a great example, maybe, if I can. A lot of companies, and this, Paula, you'll have a couple of rounds of interviewing, and some companies have 4 or 5 or 6 and drive people mad, and other companies might just do 1 or 2. We kind of do things, I think, a little bit different to places I've worked in the past, where the executives meet the people first, and then the team meets them to make the final decision. So we kind of reverse that process, and that works really, really well. Because it's one thing to be able to have the right qualifications and, the work ethic and all that good stuff. But actually what you're looking for is people with the right attitude, the right mindset, that get the culture of the place, that are the right fit, that actually people that other people want to be around.
Yeah.
And we kind of try to hire that way. And, we get that right more than we get it wrong. And it's a really nice thing to see, I'm very proud of the fact that we do it that way.
I want to say another thank you. This has been very interesting and very enjoyable. It's the first time that I think I've actually spoken to you directly. I know obviously on social media we're all pinging backwards and forwards, messaging and all that stuff, but it's been an absolute pleasure for me to sit and listen to you talk. And Bruno,
I share your pleasure. It was great, as always, to talk to Simon
you too,
and just to talk about, what's going on today and what might happen tomorrow. With a lot of pragmatism and a lot of client centricity, which I know I use that word very, very often today, but I think centricity is a key differentiator, and I'm glad to see you, Simon, lead Vistatech that way. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Bruno. It's been a real pleasure.